is a certain amount of snobbery involved, I think, sometimes still with ships. Less so now, as you may have said before, that people will assume that, oh, if it's the cruise ship version, it's the lesser version. No, 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 no. If anything, more and more people now who've done the Western are doing it on the ships because actually it's just more financially beneficial for them to do that way. The show it's the same standard and you're still performing to audiences.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How about yourself?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you for coming on to 300 Thoughts for Theatre Makers today. You're going to talk to us about life working on a cruise ship
Yep.
in a couple of moments. But first, tell us about you. How do you define yourself these days?
These days, these COVID days, how do I define myself? Uh, right now define myself as a creative struggling to be free, trapped in a cage. But I still class myself as an actor and a singer, um, and then sort of working a market on the side. Although not doing any of that at the moment, but hopefully we'll be allowed back to work soon. So at least I'll be earning something. Um, yeah, how did I mean, would you like to know how I started out? What
Yeah,
did
you
I
can do. Yeah, yeah. Because also
do?
you've got, I would say, knowing what I know, you've also got quite an entrepreneurial spirit. You're doing lots of little things at the moment. But for sure, just tell us how you got to where you are.
Well, I knew from quite a young age when I first had a taste of performing that that's what I wanted to do. So I went to East 15 Acting School. I'm aware you are very well aware of East 15. And I did the 3-year contemporary theatre course there, graduating in 2008. It's quite a number of years ago now when I think about that. And but from there, like got work quite quickly, but with a theatre and education tour, and I thought I'd made it. I'd got a job. Wasn't the best. I won't name the company. They're blacklisted anyway now, I think. But it wasn't a great experience financially or physically, but it was experience. And then I went on from there, and it seemed to be most of my work came in the form of singing. So I did another course, 3-month musical theatre course with Associated Studios. Got taught how to sing properly. I thought I could sing, but it turns out I could only hold a tune. Uh, Taught how to properly sing, and then more professional work came along. And more often than not, it was singing work as opposed to acting work. But I took it because I love it. So yeah,
And
that's
then
me in a nutshell, really.
And currently, you're kind of making your own stuff at home. So you have
Yes,
your singing. I will put a link down to a lovely video you did, which is crooning for care homes. I'll put that down at the bottom.
yes,
So yeah, you're remaining active all the time. But we're going to
trying to.
we're going to specifically talk about your time on cruise ships. Now, you
Mhm.
got a couple of contracts on cruise ships over your uh, career right now. Um, I am of the mind that sometimes there's a bit of a snobbery based around working on a cruise ship, but although I do think that's probably ebbing away. Um, so let's go back a bit. When you work on a cruise ship, what's the day to day like?
Uh, it depends on your role. If you're well, my first ship, if you were a dancer, let's say, you'd still have to do. You'd be almost like auxiliary entertainment staff. So you'd be doing sort of games with guests, trivia, looking after the library. If you're a singer, like I was free to do whatever I wanted in the day, and then I just did my job. It was luxury really for a singer. I have to say, but doesn't mean the dancers didn't have a good life either. Like you get to see amazing places. Um, when you have your time off, you can just chill out in the sun. Uh, it was very. Well, it depends on where you went. Actually, you couldn't chill out in the sun if you're going to sort of the Arctic Circle, but and if you're in a good temperature place, you can do that. If I more recently, Royal Caribbean again, like it depends on the itinerary. If you're doing a 2-week cruise, you probably have more time off. If you're doing just week cruises, then obviously all the shows that you would spread out over 2 weeks, you'd be doing in 1 week, so it'd be less time off. But day to day life, you get into a great routine of going to the gym, mean, you should be doing that anyway, but we all struggle to get the motivation. But it's walkable. You can just walk to the gym. It's great. You just get into your own little routine. You have your own space. More often than not, you get your own space if you're on sort of bigger ships and like Royal Caribbean and whatnot.
So, adding to the day-to-day thoughts, did you rehearse every day, or did you rehearse before you went on to the ship?
Okay, so when you're rehearsing off the ship for however long the rehearsal period is, for Royal Caribbean, my most recent ship doing We Will Rock You, we were out there for a couple of months. There's 2 shows to rehearse, We Will Rock You being the main one, and a sort of in-house show called The Gift that was made by Royal Caribbean. You rehearse that as well. Once you get on the ship, that's when the real hard work begins, because it doesn't matter because the theatre is being used a lot of the day for different things. So you can only get in the theatre when you get in, and it could be 1 a.m. and you have to do work. So you might be going to bed at 5 a.m. in the morning, getting up at 9 o'clock in the morning to get in whilst the theatre's free. Those are the longest days you'll get, and it's like 2 weeks of hard work. But once you get over those 2 weeks, it's a lot easier. For shows like The Gift that we did, it's very technical. There's things dropping here, there's set dropping here, and people being flown on I forgot what they're called now, but the ropes. I'm just going to call them the ropes. And you have to do that every time you do a cruise. You have to do a tech rehearsal for that. And we have to do sort of sound technical rehearsal for We Will Rock You as well every cruise prior to doing the show. That's more for sound and getting that right. Yeah. So so you wouldn't really, if someone is injured, then you have to do a reblock, and then that's extra rehearsal time. And if sort of the voice captain, the vocal captain, or the dance captain isn't seeing what they want to see, they'll work on things in the free time that you have. So
yeah,
but we were a pretty good cast, so there was less work to do, which was good.
yeah. It's funny because you reminded me of a time when I did a crazy 6 months of summer entertainment in Mallorca, and it's although not on the size of or quality of yours, the same workload was more the same. It was do various day activities and then do the shows at night. So now, what would you do differently if you went back now and did it again? Maybe you are. Is there anything you would learn really to offer people who are listening to this or watching this on YouTube? Would you say, actually, I would do this?
Well, luckily for me, I've had 3 different ship contracts now, that being my last, and third time's a charm. I took what I'd learned from the previous 2 and applied it to this one, and that is make the most of every day that you have there. Try to anyway, because once you go, you'll regret not doing the things you could have done, whether it's going on a tour, seeing somewhere you won't get to see again. And I'm talking about the sort of day-to-day life on a ship, as opposed to the show. Don't get bored of the show too quickly. Keep things interesting for yourself. Obviously, you've got to do what you've been directed to do, but if you can give a different intention to a line, but with it still making sense within the scene, keep it fresh for yourself. Trying to learn, keep listening in the show, and if someone gives you something different, that makes it interesting as well. I was very fortunate to have an incredible cast of people, not just because they were exceptionally talented, but they were amazing human beings. You don't often get that. Sometimes there will be little factions within the cast and not everyone will get along, but we, on the most part, all got along together, and that makes it easier. I thought being away for a year was going to be a chore, but it's something I had to do because A, the experience, B, the show. I've always wanted to do that show, and C, it's a good credit, and it was financially, very good for me. The downside being that I was leaving my fiance for an entire year, but being with an amazing cast made it so much easier. And I'm not saying that's something that people can go in and do, but just if you're yourself and you're open and just be friendly, and if everyone does that, I don't see why there should be problems. What would I do differently? Well, I did everything how I wanted to. I just think I think near the end, maybe I was like ready to come home, and maybe that's what I would do differently. But I think it's hard to do that because once you're ready to come home, you're ready to come home. It's only
Yeah,
when you're home that you go, one more week,
yeah,
just to live the show again, live the shows because,
yeah,
well, I didn't know I was coming home, and then like a year later would be no performing at all. So you never know what's around the corner. So just make the most of every moment you have.
yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, like you say, you kind of nailed it the third time round, and that was enjoy the moment, work really hard, appreciate what you've got, etc., and then you'll take it as it comes. So, last question then, just take into account the similar model on the mainland, um, of let's say you're in a West End show and you're on a cruise ship. What do you think are the differences between the two? Is there anything that you think, that's quite different?
First and foremost, I want to start by saying quality just the same. Like there'd be no difference, and there is a certain amount of snobbery involved. I think sometimes still with ships, less so now, as you may have said before. That people will assume that, oh, if it's the cruise ship version, it's the lesser version. No, 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 no. If anything, more and more people now who've done the Western are doing it on the ships because actually it's just more financially beneficial for them to do that way. The show it's the same standard, and you're still performing to audiences. If anything, it might be harder to please audiences because they're not paying to be there specifically for the show. They're there because there's entertainment, and if you can entertain them, even though they've not paid for it, I think that's a harder job. If you've paid to be entertained by something, you want the show to be good.
Mm.
But these guys weren't doing that. So you are performing to like a raw audience who aren't sure what they're getting into sometimes.
Mm.
There's that. I think there's all on the technical side of things, and maybe I learned more on the ship about the technical side of things than I probably would have done in the West End. May not have had the time in the West End because there's a lot more coming in early, working on stuff. It never really ends. If you're a cover, second cover, you'll be rehearsing still whilst the show's still sort of on at night. So you won't necessarily have that much time off. There's definitely more time off on the ship if you plan your time wisely
Right.
and you work hard. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, thanks for that. So what I learned from that is that there's actually an intensity to being on a cruise ship as a performer, um, and you can enjoy that experience for however long your contract is, and come away with a plethora of experience from what you just.
Yeah.
And
And don't forget, you don't get to, the audience doesn't go home and you never see them again. You're seeing them for the rest of the week, and they'll tell you what they thought about the show. So that's always an interesting experience, and what they thought about you, and if they even remembered you in it, which is can sometimes happen. I think because I wore a big blonde wig, I don't think people realised who I was half the time, which is always good. Some people are very recognisable in the show, and they'll get stopped, and I can just sort of sneak away and just get on with what I'm doing, whether it's going to get some more food for the seventh time that day. Um, uh, Trying to think of, there was something else I was about to say, but it's completely slipped my mind now. But about being on a ship. Oh, that's it. It's not just you don't go home and leave the cast either. You're living with them essentially, and that you have to be a family and you have to get along,
yeah,
or at least try on the surface. But it's more. I don't know. I feel like I've done independent theatre as well. You've done your show, you do your job, you say goodbye, you go home. It's quite insular. You're on your. It's almost like a solo effort. You're there as a team in the moment. You go home, but when you're with and living with the people, your cast on the ship, it is like you become a family. And every day, no matter even if you're not doing a show, you're spending time together because you want to. Um, and I think that's the major difference. You don't go home and be separate. You have no choice, but you're sort of just your days off of together and your days on in the show together. And it's just, again, we were so lucky that we all got along so well. I can't, and it's the most talented cast I've ever worked with, and I'll be hard pushed to work with a better cast, if I'm honest, in terms of ensemble and how in sync we all were all the time. I think, yeah, it's magic. It was magical.
Cool. That's amazing. Thank you, Paul. What I learned
Thank you.
from that is cruise ships are almost site-specific theatre, community theatre in the greatest possible way. Cool.
Yes.
Thank you so much. All right. Take care.
Thank you. Right, bye-bye.